Well, let's talk. How did I close 54, sold and penned 54 transactions in my first year in real estate and earn the equivalent of in today's money of approximately $500,000 in gross commission income? Now I know better. I talk about net income, which there was plenty of that then, but it's all about how much we take home. But I want to go over some tangible ways, okay, that you can, if you're a first year agent, or even if you're not closing 54 units, how you can get up to the 50 mark. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is simple. I made more mistakes. I did a lot right. I have to give myself credit for that, but I made as many, if not more, mistakes in my journey and sometimes those are the best educators, is those mistakes, because they're super expensive, they're super frustrating, and we do them and then we go do them again. So anyway, hopefully this can prevent you from doing some of that stuff, right? And I hope you had a great weekend. I was up in Canada hunting, and I had a great weekend with my son and my friend Larry and some old friends up there that I've been going up to see them for a year. All right, but without further ado, let's roll. Now, you got to remember, so I'm going to set the stage here. I got into business full time, real estate. I got my license a few months before, but I was coming out of kind of a corporate training job in between 4 or 5 nonprofit businesses. I did mortgages, I think from 99 until 2008, and then they all imploded, all the mortgage companies, going through that whole foreclosure crisis we went through. That's kind of when I got into real estate. Started, doesn't really matter what I was doing. Let's just talk about you. But I had a lot of failure. Okay. All that to be said, I was super broke. So August 1st, 2013, today is 9/22/2025. I've been doing this for just over 12 years. Please keep in mind, I had 2 kids, $2,500 to my name. I was recently, excuse me, sober from drugs. And I had, it was the 1st of August. I had $1,800, I had $2,500, $1,800 rent payment due in 5 days, because you got to pay by the 5th of the month. And I went all in on myself and my family, and I leapt. Okay. It was literally do or die. Okay. 4 months into my career, I was shot in my head while hunting in southwest Montana and life flighted. Okay, and I was out of work for very close to a month, and really should have been out for a heck of a lot longer than that. So, all that to be said, this is a world of excuses, a world of avoidance, and work ethic is dying on the vine. All right, and that may not be you, but it is. Everybody wants every year. They're talking more about their accomplishments and less about their journey. Okay? So this is about the journey. It's that messy shit in the middle that matters. Okay? That's the stuff that can help people. How you got going and how you got through it. It drives me nuts when people are just looking at the Ferrari, and everybody that hasn't worked a day in their life wants the Ferrari. Nobody wants to talk about all the stuff they went through in the middle. Okay? So here we go. The purpose of this is just to show you that anything's possible, but you got to do the work, and you got to stop avoiding the work. Okay. And you got to say, maybe my way is not the best way, and that's okay. That's what other people are there for. So the first thing I committed to do, okay, number 1 or letter A, or who cares? I'll probably miss some, is I considered real estate a business from day one. Not a pastime, not a hobby, not something that's just going to get me a vacation. It was like I was a sole provider for my family. And I think, regardless of whether your spouse makes $100,000 a year, $50,000 a year, a couple $100,000 a year, you're independently wealthy already. Don't you want to do something like you? Okay. I know a lot of single moms out there. I'm so proud of you. I'm a single dad. Okay. Widower, I guess they call it. But I considered this a full-time business and a business. Okay, that was the number one thing. I said, I'm going to run this, or do my best to run this as a business. That was hard because I just lost 5 businesses, four different businesses, 4 LLCs blew up. I'd failed at everything for probably 15 years prior to that, but it all led up to this. I just decided I wasn't going to fail again. And I decided to do the work. Okay. I signed up for letter B. I signed up for coaching, $1,000 a month. Remember, I had 2,500. Rent was due in the 5th. Not sure if your brokers told you this, but real estate's super expensive because you got to buy a really good website. No brokerage provides a really, really good one that you don't have to pay for. They basically give you a Rolodex in the sky is about it. It doesn't do anything to help you create business. They don't get enough from you to give you something that actually works to grow your business. And then if they did, would you use it anyways? I signed up for coaching for $1,000 a month with no money. I gave $1,000 to $2,500 to there. Left me short for rent. I did it anyway. Begged my landlord to let me pay him either next month or later this month. I went right into my Google Calendar and right into Google Docs. And my coach gave me a little one-pager, a little one-page goal thing. And I filled out my weekly, monthly, and annual goals. Income I wanted to make in transactions I wanted to close. And how many people I was going to have to talk to, how many appointments I was going to have to set, how many of those appointments were going to convert into a listing or a buyer rep signed. Very minimal tracking, but I tracked it and I tracked daily. I mastered the Google Calendar. I set appointments. This is C or D. I mastered my Google Calendar. I added my call time in the morning. Everybody wants to talk about everything in the morning and not make calls. Every morning for 3 hours I made calls. I set my number of people I needed to speak to a day to 30 to 40. Because I had to pay some rent. I had to pay, all these softwares are like $1,000, $1,500 a month and like $4,000 to $5,000 in lead spend per month right off the bat, month one. Okay. Well, now I've got like 30,000 leads, 12 years later in there, but I had to master my calendar. In other words, no screwing around. Every hour was time blocked. I cannot stress that enough. Now, every day I tracked how many calls I made, how many people I spoke to, how many appointments I set, again, how many pendings, how many closings, all of that from day one. I logged it every single night. What if you did that? Would you know where your business was at? The answer is, of course you would. Then, I got an auto dialer that auto imported leads. I used Mojo. Okay. I share all the technology. I still use it. We still use it in Brivity. I share everything. I don't, but I mastered that. Okay. I mastered how to put the leads in there, and I loaded my leads either the night before or the morning of. Woke up early. Next, I knew who I was going to call before I arrived at the office. I called the same people at the same time every single day, and I mastered the repetitious boredom. Okay? Because you're on hold waiting for someone to pick up, oftentimes for 10, 15 minutes, and then someone picks up. Okay? I mastered my scripts, my buyer scripts, my seller scripts, FSBOs, expired, just listed, just sold, my pre-qualification script. I knew who I was going to call, and every day I got better at what I was going to say, and I practiced what to say 1 to 2 hours a day for my first 3 years, and then went to 30 minutes after 3 years per day, 5 days a week. Everywhere I go, I have scripts everywhere I reach on my desk, I still have scripts. Do you? Or are you lying? Are you saying, I don't need to do that? Right? So I mastered my scripts. I mastered the pre-qualification script and the listing presentation script and the buyer presentation script. I could recite it in my sleep after a year, okay? Because I practiced so much. I mastered technology. Google wasn't as important then as it is now, but it was still very important, and I started that very, very early. And websites and tools. The tools are supposed to save you time, not cost you more time. Okay? But you could have all the tools in the world, and if you don't use them, it doesn't work. I talk to 40 people per day. That took me 4 to 5 hours per day of lead generation time. And I did a lot, weekly or bi-weekly, 100 talks per day days, okay? Called a Bold 100 at the time or a Rise 100 now. I made Saturday calls because all the people I couldn't reach during the week, I called on Saturday, and I did 1 or 2 evening sessions. So rather than do 4 or 5 hours in the morning, I would do 3 or 4 in the morning and an hour or 2 at night, one night a week. I'm just trying to get the people that weren't home during the day, right, at night or on the weekends, okay? It's not super sexy, but it's what worked, okay? I reinvested 10% of my earnings on myself. I was going to 4 seminars a year. Look, you could go to 900 seminars a year. How do you think the seminar speakers get paid? They constantly invite you to seminars. Now, you're going to learn something from all of them, but at some point you need to set your ass down and get to work. You can't be constantly at a seminar. You have to have some continuity or flow to your business. So I went to 4 a year. That's it. That's all you need. Every quarter, at minimum, you need a motivational boost and a skill boost. Okay? I upgraded my wardrobe. I've downgraded now. But I've upgraded. I wore suits and ties, and I felt good about myself when I walked in there. And if you're asking someone to pay you 6%, you shouldn't look like you just rolled out of a cardboard box. Okay? I became a student of learning. I constantly was on YouTube. I still do that on my farm. Every time I need to figure something out on my farm, I'll send myself or my son on there. Okay? I constantly read self-improvement and business books. Think and Grow Rich, Psycho-Cybernetics, all the ones, and they're coming out with more every day. Spend 10 or 15 minutes a day on the mind. It's so important. I delegated immediately to an admin, hired an admin right away because I was close 17 between when I started and the first of the year. I could afford an admin now. I started by paying per file $500, and then I hired someone full time, I think, in January. And by then, because of the sheer amount of listings I was taking, I had to have someone to show those listings and properties from the incoming buyer calls from both the paid leads and whatever else. And by the way, I paid my rent by the end of the month because I closed something, because I was talking to so many people. Okay. Now I did get 30 days free, 60 days free, 90 days freeze from the lead aggregators and the website company. I begged them. Okay, but I made that happen. Closed and pended 54 in my first 12 months. I spoke to 6,000, not dialed, spoke to 6,000 people the first year and for the first 3-4 years. And then my database, I didn't have to speak to 6,000 to hit my goals because I was better at what I said because I practiced 1 to 2 hours a day, remember what to say. Real estate's the only business in the world where nobody practices what they're doing. Okay? You think the NFL teams, right? Now that we're all playing fantasy football or watching football on Sundays, or any sport that you watch, you think they just show up for the game? No, those people are doing like a maniacal amount of practice during the week. And you should as a real estate agent too. That's funner when you're around a group of people who like to do that. Okay? So that's something you should do. And then I was persistent and unrelenting in my follow-up. All right. So it's very, very important. So those are the things. I could have probably written down 50 more things, but those were the very basic things. I learned what to say. I had a ton of people to say it to, from paid leads and also lists, cold generated leads. And I did that. I've been told no probably hundreds of thousands of times in my life on the telephone. I'm still here. I'm still super happy. I'm still in a good mood 99% of the time. And I'm not dead from it, right? I built I'm not even close to where I'll ever be, and I'll never arrive, but I built a great life. And these were just some of the ways I could do that. So I wanted to share with you. But above all else, I realized I would fail, and I did it anyway. And I think so many people are afraid to fail. They avoid the actions that might create a failure because some idiot, whether it was parents or whether it was society or whatever it was, said that you're not supposed to fail. Well, you are, because that's the fastest way to course correct. Okay. So failure is part of success in every sense of the word. Okay. So again, hopefully that was helpful to you. I'll post, I'm going to email this video and everything out to whoever wants it. And I hope you have an incredible day. And again, I hope some of that was helpful. Thanks.